Well, he's hung up his cowboy hat and is pursuing life behind the pulpit. Award-winning, platinum-selling former country music singer-songwriter Granger Smith is with me today.
Without the loss of River, there is no Maverick. And so I live in a very strange world now where I can't have both. I have to have one or the other. So if I had Riv back, I have to give Maverick away, who's now the same age as Riv when we lost him, which is just... and I don't think it's probably not healthy to even need to go down that road, because what is. What happened. And here we are.
This is CIA Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sands. I've got New York Times best-selling author and former country music star Granger Smith joining me right here on the podcast. Now, he shared his personal testimony in the best-selling memoir, Like a River, and he's also now the author of a children's book called Up Towards the Light. It's all about bringing a message of hope and strength to children navigating loss and grief. As many of you may know, he tragically lost his 3-year-old son, River, in 2019. And we're going to talk about all that and how he's found God's grace and mercy. So let's get right to my interview with Granger Smith.
Hey, Granger, how you doing?
I'm good, buddy. Thanks for having me.
So let's get into it, because we've got a lot to talk about. First of all, welcome. Thank you for taking this time out to spend with us. And, a lot of folks have known you for quite some time, and you've been very successful, both in as an influencer and as an artist. And I'd like you just to acquaint those who are not familiar with you. What is it about you that in the past, what is it that really inspired you to go out and to do what you once did and what you loved, and what made you uniquely different? I'm just trying to figure out, and we're going to get to the transition here in a minute, but what is it that drove you as a country artist?
Stubbornness is the first thing that came to my mind about 3 times as you were asking that question. Pretty stubborn, and I just had a genuine love for making music and everything in the sphere of that. Everything, all the outcroppings of making music, which is performing it and recording it and traveling with my road brothers to deliver it. Just a genuine love for that. Honestly, not a genuine talent for that. The talent came because I was so stubborn. I just was like the last man standing in a lot of ways when nothing was working for so many years, and I never was that talented. And so the talent only, there's a lower threshold of talent that just gets you in the door of the arena. But once you're in the arena, you got to have more. You got to have more juice than that. And I think for me, it was just stubbornness and love for it.
And how many years did you perform?
I started performing probably 30 years ago, maybe a little more. Yeah.
So you had a pretty good. You not only did you have a good feel for it, but you had the ability to be there for the ups and the downs, and I guess your wife decided to marry you anyway.
Yeah, we didn't have any. Yeah. I don't know why she did. To be honest, I don't know why.
Well, I'm sure she saw the potential in you, right?
I don't know. I don't know how anyone could have really. Yeah.
Yeah, right. We all get right. Some of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had an experience, a life-changing experience that really changed everything with your son. And I'd like for you to just tell us about that story. So take me back to that moment and take me back to just paint the picture for us.
Yeah, it was June 4th, 2019. Everything was great for my family. I was, the career was soaring. It had everything that I'd wanted and dreamed of and built, and including the family and the house we lived in and the property we were on. Had 3 beautiful children, and it was just, we were very happy. We were in a good place. And that particular day, I was outside about to head out to tour the next morning, and I was outside with the kids, all 3 kids. My daughter was doing gymnastics with me, and the boys were playing water gun fight, running around the yard in between me and my daughter. And after a few minutes, I noticed that it was quiet, and I looked around for my 3-year-old, which is what you do when it's quiet. And he was inside the gate, the locked gated pool, and he was face down in there in the water. So I crashed into the water and pulled him out, and I was expecting him to be scared and nervous, and I was going to say, "How'd you get in here? You know you're not supposed to be in here." But that's not what happened. He was gone. He was lifeless and cold, and the emergency services were able to get a heartbeat back. But the 10 minutes it took them to arrive was just too long for his little brain. He didn't make it.
And tell me about what that was like, that 10 minutes.
The 10 minutes I was on the phone with EMS on speakerphone as they were walking me through CPR, which I didn't really know how to do besides what I'd seen in the movies. So I was working, I was working as hard as I could, praying. Wasn't crying. I was focused on trying to get his heartbeat back. At first I was worried about breaking his little ribs, and then I had this horrifying thought that, well, maybe that's not the least of my worries right now. So the emergency services came screaming down this old country road in this Texas farmland, and just kind of piercing through that beautiful serenity. My daughter ran out to the front yard and directed the EMS into the backyard, and they took over from there.
And did you ride did you ride with him to the hospital?
No, they took him. First of all, they came. It was police, fire trucks. They took Riv and they put him in there, and they had to go immediately. And we followed them, maybe a minute or 2 behind them, grabbing the other kids, putting clothes on them. Or they all had pajamas on. None of us had shoes or phones or anything like that.
What kind of little boy was River?
He was a good one. He was a good one. He was wild, free, wild red hair, always barefoot, always adventurous, always exploring. He lived life to the fullest. 1,114 days of it, he lived to the fullest, and he had everybody laughing. He was always the life of the party everywhere he went. Yeah.
So they rushed him to the hospital, and what was that moment like when you found out that he was not going to make it? Was your wife with you?
Yeah, we went to the hospital, and they had his heartbeat back, and so we thought we'd really dodged a bullet, or I did. When we saw him in the hospital, he'd had all his color back. His breathing was normal with the machine, with the breathing machine. He was warm to the touch. It was like he was sleeping. And so we were in that state about 24 hours or so. We slept with him, laid with him, prayed over him, talked to him, put his little red Lightning McQueen race car in his hand, and as he was gripping it in the hospital bed. And the doctor came in. They kept doing test and monitoring him. And the doctor came in probably about 24, maybe a little more, 24 hours later. He came in and said he'd like to talk to us. And just out of the blue, he just said, all the results are telling me he's not going to make it. And just, that doesn't make any sense to me. That just didn't compute in my mind. So I just said the only thing that I knew to say, and that was, "Thank you. We would like a second opinion, please." And so he said, "Absolutely." And they got another team of neurologists who did the same test over. And then now this time a team came to us and they said, "We've all confirmed what the doctor said, but there is 0 chance of survival. So now we are waiting for you to tell us when to unplug the machine to let him go."
So, looking back at that moment, when you were all at your home, and this all happened, basically, you were right there. How did you feel? How did you say, what if, how come, how coulds? Because I know a lot of people go through this, and they I had a friend once tell me, "David, you can't live in the land of regret your whole life." How did you feel, and how did you push through that?
What's the time frame you're asking the question in?
Oh, when all of this came down, when all of this happened.
Still in the hospital, you mean?
When the accident.
I mean, in those that ground zero, as I call it, that first week or so, you can't put that together. It's impossible. The human brain will only allow so much corrupted data to enter before it just can't. It's like a computer; it just starts overloading, and it's just a spinning wheel. So most people that have experienced extreme loss, grief, regret, guilt, shame, they have experienced that spinning wheel where they look back on it and they just go, "You know what? I don't know what I was thinking. I was just numb. I was just kind of just a walking, breathing hunk of cells. I had no way to accommodate anything that was going on. That wasn't until later when we were able to process that." Yeah.
And how much later was it that you were able to process?
Probably after the funeral, and I'm speaking. I think probably a pretty general idea for a lot of people that have been in these kind of situations. And after the funeral, you get home, and that's usually been about a week or so since you lost them. And that first day, you go home, and you get in bed, and the lights go off, and you go, "Oh, they're 6 feet in the dirt right now. What am I going to do?" It's kind of the first time you think that, because there's 5 or 6, 7 days leading up to the funeral. You're thinking, "I got to do this. I got to arrange this. I've got to fill out this death certificate. I've got to do all these things that don't make any sense to my brain." And you haven't really thought yet about what am I going to do with one less person. And that's the first time I believe you get to thinking about it is probably that first night,
When did you work through this to the point that you felt as though you needed to share your story in your book, which is like a river, finding the faith and strength to move forward after loss and heartache? How much time had passed before you decided, you know what, this is something that I've got to do. This is a story I've got to share, and I've got to help others work through the find their purpose in pain and work through grief and get to the other side of this. And I got to share my story. How did you get to that point?
The idea of writing a book, it was probably about 3 years before I thought, and it wasn't really a gradual conclusion I came to. It was more like, I should write a book. Oh, I have to write a book. It was really that. Once it hit me, I just couldn't put the idea down. I knew I had to. But the sentiment behind helping other people, that was early on. I mean, that was back even into ground zero. We learned quickly as humans that if we could have sympathy with another, and now I'm not talking about empathy. I think there's a difference. I think empathy is actually not helpful. In the scenario of you thinking of yourself someone's in quicksand, empathy would be jumping in 2 feet into the quicksand with them and holding them and saying, we'll go down together. I don't think that's helpful. I think rather sympathy is the word I would like to use, where you have one foot in the quicksand with them and a hand on them and the other foot on the solid rock. And when you could have that, for humans learn early on that having another person to relate to in their emotional distress is so life-giving, which is why Amber and I, even now to this day, will have couples that have lost a child and they want to come talk to us, and they want to hear what we have to say, and they want to talk to us because they know that we could relate. And there's just a strange comfort in that. So that was early on. We thought that, we learned early on. And it doesn't mean we're superior in any way. We learned that a small part of healing, a way to have our heart beat a little easier, is to share our story with others.
So what purpose did you and your wife Amber, what purpose did you find in the pain?
Well, I mean, that's a very, very complicated question. We could talk for 4 or 5 hours, and for me to build a thesis to answer that. And the reason it's complicated is because it could be that I could answer that in a very shallow way, and I could say, look, Amber decided to donate his organs, and as they harvested those organs from that perfect little body, and match them to the recipients. And that recipient, whoever that was, we know a few of them, we don't know all of them, may or may not have been praying for that moment, for a miracle. God, just give me a miracle. I'm losing my life. I'm sick. I don't know if this will ever happen. And they get a phone call that says, we found a recipient. And in that moment, there's purpose. It might seem small, but that's purpose right there. Even though we're in ground zero, we just lost our baby. This is the worst thing ever. That was the first time I realized that, yes, this is the worst thing. This is darkness like I've never seen before. But even in that extreme darkness, there is some light. It might be small, but it's not all dark. There is something there. And in the moment, and early on, that moment was the donated organs. A miracle is happening for this one person. So that's one instance of why is there purpose in pain. And then the bigger instance as we move on theologically into who is God? What is his purpose? What is our purpose for his glory? Then we realize now that question has a whole new meaning as we look through the Bible and we see countless instances that God is not a God of accidents. God is a God of purpose and sovereignty and providence and planning and power. He's a God that nothing slips through his hands. He knows of everything, and everything is working for a greater good or a greater glory. So in that aspect, where's their purpose in pain, and how do I know that? That was a new me that realized that aspect of it.
Now you gave up the country music scene, so to speak, and you made this big transition, and you decided to go another route. First of all, let me ask you: prior to all this, were you a believer?
Yes, when I made that decision, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that if I was not a believer.
So tell me about
Doesn't make any sense.
tell me about the transition that you made and why you made that decision.
Well, that was, I mentioned that deciding to write the book was a kind of an instant, I have to do it. Leaving music was not. It was the opposite. Leaving music was a small idea that started creeping into my head. I was getting out and I was preaching a little bit. I was talking more. I was having more dinners with people that were going through something that wanted me to hear and listen. And I would do that, and I would say, wow, there was purpose in this. There's something in this that matters more than the other things I do. And then I would go back and I would justify it by saying, music is great. It entertains people. It brings them joy. It puts a smile on their face when they may not want to smile. So music's important. I need to continue to do that. And then the more and more I preached the gospel, the more I thought, well, okay, I need to preach the gospel more on the music stage, because then I could justify giving them a smile, giving them joy, and I'm preaching the gospel, and I'm playing music like I've always done and doing what I love, and that's the best of all worlds. But this little thought kept creeping into my mind. And that little thought was saying, this is all about you. This music thing, this stage, everything you're doing, it's about you, isn't it? It's not about denying yourself like the Bible says, taking up your cross. This is not about humbling yourself. This is about exalting yourself. And I would push that thought back down into the deep crevices of my mind and go, no, I love music. I'm just not thinking of it the right way. I'm not doing it the right way. I need to exalt God more and glorify him more on the stage. And then I would get up there and there'd be some people on the front row not raising their hands or not quite singing along like I liked them to. And I would say, what's wrong with these people? And then that voice would come back and go, there it is. There's the moment right here. You're needing them to exalt you. And that thought just grew and grew and grew until finally I thought, maybe I should give it up. And when I thought that, when I admitted that to myself, I felt a peace about that. I thought, yeah, I think I should surrender this. And so I scheduled a farewell tour, and we ran for about 8 more months and ended on August the 20th of last year. And after that, there's been nothing but peace in that decision.
Tell me about your new children's book on grief and called Up Towards the Light.
So there's a little component from the book, the trade book, Like a River, that made it into this children's book. And that was the idea of relating myself to a tree, where the tree is like us. It's not a rock. Often we want to think of ourselves as a rock. We could be a rock for our family and our friends that they could lean on. But then we realize, well, the rock has nothing to lean on itself. And so I wanted to think of myself more as a tree that could bend and break, if necessary, break limbs, but still stand tall and have roots that intertwine with the other trees. And as I thought more and more about that, I thought that if the tree focuses too much on the ground and the roots and the soil and the ancestors that have fallen before it and the nourishment that it gets from the ground and the water, and it would lose vision of what really matters to the tree, the one thing that it really needs to do, and that is to look up toward the light. And realize that I was probably a lot like that too, thinking too much about the past and thinking about where I've come from and what I had lost, instead of focusing on where real growth comes from, and that would be from God.
And what kind of reception have you had for this book? What's been the feedback?
I haven't spent a lot of time in public since I've had this book. I've done I've been out a few times. And so I hope it's only been just over a week or so. So I hope that it matters. And probably more importantly, I hope that it matters to one person. If it works for one family that stumbles across this book, and it's a conversation starter for a child maybe that needs to talk about grandpa and the parents don't know quite how to bring it up. Maybe this book could be that conversation starter to bring healing to the family.
As we come to a conclusion to this conversation, I want to just speak a little bit, or you to speak a little bit about a bright light in your life, and that's your son, Maverick.
Yeah.
And what he's like, and how God has brought this wonderful light into your life, and what that means to what he means to you and Amber.
Yeah, when you asked earlier about purpose in the pain, I mean, one of the greatest examples of that is Maverick. You know, the Lord blessed us with another baby boy, to us that we weren't supposed to have any more children. In fact, you know, the doctor said that we wouldn't. But the Lord had his plan with Mav, and without the loss of River, there is no Maverick. And so I live in a very strange world now where I can't have both. I have to have one or the other. So if I had Riv back, I have to give Maverick away, who's now the same age as Riv when we lost him, which is just, and I don't think, it's probably not healthy to even need to go down that road, because what is. What happened, and here we are. But the truth is, and the Lord doesn't always redeem in this kind of specific way, but he did give us all that we needed to make it through the darkest season of our life. And part of what he provided for us was another little boy that was not supposed to exist according to our own finite minds. And so, yeah, Mav means the world to me, and to his siblings as well. And to him, this is the family he was always supposed to arrive in, and this is just the way life is. It doesn't matter to him. But for us, we know that he is a miracle.
And what's the significance of his name?
Well, we thought a lot about, we wanted to honor his big brother, River. And so Maverick has the letters R-I-V in his name, and his middle name is Beckham, which means home by the river.
Wow. That's beautiful. Well, my friend, thank you for spending this time with us, and thank you for your ministry. Thank you for writing these books, and thank you for keeping the faith, and thank you for being a real illustration that there is light on the other side of all of this, and for bringing people so much hope and inspiration.
Well, thank you, David. Thanks for sharing your platform.
Thanks again, Granger. Head on over to SingerSongwriter.com to get more information on both his memoir and children's book. And there you'll also be able to check out the Granger Smith podcast. And of course, check out our podcast at ContagiousInfluencers.com, where you can rate and review all of our episodes. Well, don't do them all because it will take you several hundred hours, but they're there if you want to listen to them. And of course, we're on YouTube and at KeepTheFaith.com, where we have all kinds of goodies for you. So check out that website at KeepTheFaith.com. Until next time, I'm David Sams. Go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living in black and white. I'll see you next time.